So I think I've shown you guys, at least on Instagram, I don't know about on YouTube, but this is a really great hack. I don't like that term, but pro tip sounds a little like I'm bragging, and I'm not really a pro at, I don't know, maybe I'm a pro at using a screw gun, I'm not sure, but this is the deal. Unless you like looking for bits, which I don't, I use T20 through T30 all the time, plus Phillips, less so square drive in recent years. I like to have them right here where I don't have to look for them. Because even though these are nice bit kits, it's one of the only reasons I buy these GRK every now and then to put my bits in. They don't last for a super long time, so every now and then I buy a new one. I like this size. They're making them a little harder to open than they used to, but these eventually break off. So they only last so long. But this is great. The thing is, it's not as good as having the bits right next to you. What I've found, after about 2 to 3 years, this magnet tends to break off from the epoxy. So what I'm doing now is I'm sanding it down and roughening it up, and I'm gonna roughen this up. It grabs to the impact driver really well, but this is what happens if it falls over, it eventually knocks this out. So what I'm doing is just once every few years reattach it, and I'm going to reattach it a bit better by making this surface a little rougher, and also maybe it had oils from my hands on it, I'm not sure. But what I should do to really make sure it's a bit rougher is I'll scuff it up even more. I sanded it, but with like 80 grit, but still, it's not that rough. So if I'm heating these epoxies up so they run a little bit better. But I can just kind of give these a nice, score them up a little bit. That'll help. And I'll probably hit it with alcohol right before I do it. There. That side. Just make it nice and rougher so the epoxy has something to grip onto. And I'll clean it off. Clean off. Should roughen this up too. Epoxy on epoxy is a pretty good bond, but not too worried. Make sure it sits in the sun, dries off really good, and then glue it on. I'll let that dry while I mix up a little epoxy. This West System G-Flex, West System's awesome for the big cans, but they also make these little ones. The cool thing about epoxy is you can leave it in your shop and it can freeze seemingly forever, for years, and not go bad. So you don't have to remember to bring it in like your yellow glue every fall if your shop freezes. And most of us, unless we're professionally using the shop most days, aren't gonna keep the shop heated all the time. So it does get really cold here in my shop. and this stuff keeps. It's awesome. I've had this stuff for I don't know, years now. I just eyeball it, and it's interesting. I tend to use the hardener at a higher volume, so I'm trying to balance it back out. You know, they're 1-to-1, so. And a little piece of scrap of metal. Mix it with. Make sure it's nice and centered. Wooden mixer is better. I knew that was gonna happen. This is a pretty strong magnet. Oh, come on. I got a lot of scraps of wood over in the wooden part of the shop. This is like my metal zone, but I use this metal table for like everything. Not fine woodwork, but kind of everything else. There we go. That's kind of nice and making as much contact as I can because they do tend to come off. But so worth it. I figure I've saved, I don't know, hours of looking for bits. I mean, and I'm more organized. My shop's pretty organized. It's not like my bits are all over the place. But it's like go out to the field to fix a fence or work on the cow shed. You know, you're 400 yards from the shop. Oh, there's one bit I don't have. If you bring the screw gun, you've got 5 to 6 bits that you need, you know, all the time. So just one less step. There is some concern that I've thought about this magnet hurting the impact driver, hurting the tool. I've now used them on a Makita, and now I migrated to the DeWalt 20 volt because my Makita batteries are all junk after a while. So I just switched platforms. The batteries are really the expensive part. And it doesn't seem like they mess with the motor at all. I just was a little worried about, you know, serious magnet and motor combo. So, you know what? I'm gonna mix up a little more glue just while I'm doing it. I try to be stingy with this glue because it's just such amazing stuff, but it's pretty expensive, but it's also just, I don't know. It's very easy to mix up more than you need. So it's easy to have way more. And so this time is one of the few times I've not enough. Let's get a different mixer. Some wood. I'm gonna go get a piece of wood. There we go. Doesn't need to be wood. It needs to be non-ferrous. Which this piece of hay is. That makes me feel better. And nice, really fill this gap here on the back end. Hope you guys are all doing well. Beautiful day here. This has been an amazing spring. It feels really old school. I know winter was broken there for a little while, which I don't mean to overstate it, guys. I know there's, I'm definitely often pointing out when the climate extremism, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've studied climate change for almost at least 25 years before it was really a thing, and I'm fully aware of the climate shifting. I don't want to argue over how much is anthropogenic and how much isn't. I don't think anyone really knows, but it's safe. It's a good bet to have that a bunch of it's anthropogenic. Doesn't mean any of the popular solutions being proposed are a good idea. But without getting into that, we had an incredibly mild winter where it really felt like things were a bit busted, and then we had just like this rebalancing March where it snowed last half of February and March, and now it feels like an old school spring with tons of snow on the ground. So as far as bits I like to have on here all the time, it's mostly 5/16 more than 1/4 inch, because you can get by in a pinch with the 1/4 inch that the drill is, that the impact driver is, although it's not too kosher. And then T20 through T30, T20, T25, T30. Square drive, although I've mostly moved away from square drive, I used to be all about them. You got to have a Phillips with you most of the time because there's Phillips all over the place, especially on an old farm like here, Homestead. There's a lot of Phillips that I never put in, but I have to deal with. And same with flathead. So those will go on here once this is dry. I'm going to keep this in the sun. It dries better with a little warmth. And then we'll get back to it. I just actually had a really weird fix. Someone drove over. So I'm going to do a workshop video, actually online course really soon, about a lot of the tips and tricks that I've found for having an efficient workspace. Welding cart that's much smaller than the welding table, not having the welder on the work table because for reasons I'll talk about, you want the welder to be able to get a lot of their places, and just having the zone 1, zone 0.5 of your tooling, just how to set that up. It's been, in some ways 20 years in the making to finally arrive at this exact setup, which is just very, very efficient. It is ostensibly a welding table, but like I said, it's just so great for everything. All the stuff that you use daily, super easy access. Magnets. This whole thing comes off. You see, this just sits in here into a piece of metal. I can grab this whole thing, lift it off, set it aside, and same with the vise. A little hard with one hand, but this whole vise slides up and out. Just slot it in here. So I can have this whole table clear for larger pieces of work. I did tack weld on this chopper. So I would have to nip that off to clear the entire thing, but that's enough. I've never had to because I still have, 90% of it clear. All my clamps and everything here, scrap metal just for weighing it down. I did put nicer, I went cheap with the casters first because I just didn't realize how useful this was going to be. And now I have hundreds of dollars into this table, don't get me wrong. But it's such the workhorse. It's amazing. And then I just tweaked the electrification. So I can move it around into the microclimate, work in a t-shirt on a 25-degree day, unless the wind is just wrong, and have everything right where I need it. Love this thing. Light. There's light right here. Boom. So I can come in here at night or during the day in the winter when it's dark and have like 5 watts of light going. And so anyway, this is what I was just dealing with, this shenanigans. I had to use the excavator for weight because maybe with my plow truck or maybe someone else drove over the corner of my mill and bent this corner right here like 2 inches down from the plane of everything else. It all has to be in a perfect plane. So I heated the heck out of it. It bent right on this fulcrum. I have hemlock supporting the base, and I don't have it over the whole thing because it's the first thing I milled, and you can't mill the full length. I could do 2 pieces, but I wanted to do out of 1. Anyway, I need to mark the corners better for huge snowstorms in the winter. So I lifted it up with a jack, and then it just lifted the whole mill base. So I had to put the log on it, drop it, put the weight of the excavator on it, and then jack it more with heat. And I got it back within a 16th. So pretty happy with it. I'll probably support this corner a bit for the next year of milling, just with like extra support till it maybe trues itself back up. And I probably need to just grinder. This got a little tweaked. I don't know if you can tell. There's a little bump there. The mill might not notice it, but I might just grinder that corner off if it does. And now I gotta repaint it. It's much easier to harm your stuff than to fix it. Sometimes it's never quite as good as it was before you messed with it. Hope all are great. It's a beautiful day. First geese flying north, flocks of geese I saw today. Can't see the cows out there, but they're doing good.